Iowa state lawmakers this week began looking into settlement payments the city of Davenport made to three former city employees. Together, they amount to nearly $2 million, including $1.6 million payout to former city administrator Corey Spiegel. We'll tell you about that hearing in a little bit. But first, we want to give you the latest on a separate investigation about that same issue the state auditor is conducting. We spoke with him just a few days ago. And joining us now is State Auditor Rob Sand. Rob, thank you so much for taking the time this week to chat with us. I want to
Sure,
kind of
John.
go back a little bit in history here and just help us understand how your office got involved with this investigation.
Yeah, we had a legally qualifying request to start an investigation into those settlement payments in Davenport. We can't automatically just dig in on a local issue, but when we get a request that's sufficient under law, we can. And frankly, we think there's some really important unanswered questions about the legality of the payments and the process that was used to arrive at them.
Can you clarify for everyone what exactly, in particular, in this investigation, are you looking at? And are there things potentially that you're not looking at that are not within either your jurisdiction or that are not necessarily part of this investigation?
What we're doing is we're looking at these three settlements in which millions of dollars were paid out from taxpayer funds and trying to make sure that everything was done the way it was supposed to be and trying to understand what went into the process around the decision to do that. And so what we want to know is we want to know, was this process followed? Were legal requirements followed? For example, what was the at what point were they settled? Was that settlement approved? And were those payments made or were those payments authorized before they were actually supported by and voted on by the city council? So there's a number of different questions that have come up. But the other thing to keep in mind about this is what we're looking at is the settlements. And we always, in any good audit, any good investigation, it goes where the facts lead it. And so if there's other aspects of the settlement that we determine we need to be looking into, we may end up doing that as well.
Can you describe how critical it is that you get the information from these meetings that were held behind closed doors? I know you requested information from those meetings. The city is pushing back on those in court. How critical is it, and do you anticipate you'll eventually get access to the information?
That's going to be up to the judge in this case. We do know that we had a qualifying legal request. We believe that what we have asked for is something that we should receive. But I think it is important to point out we are seeing a growing culture of government secrecy against the state auditor's office in Iowa. You know, the legislature last year passed a bill that made a wide variety of documents off limits from the auditor's office. They even made it so that they would restrict our access to court in situations if it was involving state government, where instead we would have a three-person panel deciding whether or not we could get the documents, with the three people on that panel being one person from our office and then two people chosen by the governor. So most folks can do that math in their head. It's not too complicated, but we are going to keep fighting on these issues because we think it's important for taxpayers to know how their money is getting spent.
I want to springboard off that a little bit because you released a statement this week talking about the importance of transparency, specifically for the folks in Davenport. I know you probably don't want to jump ahead here. However, it seems as if you are saying that what a lot of people probably have already seen on their own is that there wasn't an appropriate level of transparency in this.
Well, we certainly think that there are some very legitimate and important unanswered questions about the process that went into these settlements and whether or not everything was done in accordance with the law.
This week, the state lawmakers are going to be looking at this. There's a hearing on Wednesday. Can you help us understand what relationship, what they're looking at has to do with your investigation, or are these two separate investigations that essentially would be happening simultaneously?
They are separate investigations. Lawmakers are always welcome to make requests to the auditor's office for us to look at things. But when we have an engagement, an investigation that's going on, we are actually obligated by law to maintain, as much as we can, a level of confidentiality around that investigation. So obviously, we can confirm that an investigation exists. We can confirm, obviously, we went into court. A court hearing is a public situation. But what they are looking at, they have not asked us about, and we would not be able to share with them what exactly we have found once we have documents and have begun to find information.
Okay. Help us understand what authority your office has. Um, Perhaps people just don't know. Once you issue a report, what does it, regardless of what it says, does it have any ability to move things forward?
Yeah, John, that's a really good question, and folks get confused about that all the time. If you think about the state auditor's office as the taxpayer's watchdog, right? We do what a watchdog does. We can sniff around and we can bark. So we can investigate and then communicate with Iowans as to what we find. Our office does not have the legal authority once we have issued a report to, for example, file criminal charges in those kinds of situations, to remove someone from office in those kinds of situations. So we really, at the end of the day, are sort of the investigator for the state. We can put the information out there. We can make that available to the public. What happens after that is up to different entities, whether it's the county attorney or in some cases the voters.
Is it too early to determine how quickly you may complete your investigation?
You know, when I was at the Attorney General's office as the chief public corruption prosecutor for the state, I always had investigations where we thought we might be close to getting it wrapped up. And then we go and ask somebody a different question and they open a whole new can of worms. And so we have a lot of work left to do. For that reason, I don't try to give out time estimates because I don't want to tell you I'm going to be done in a month, then find out that there's actually a lot more to this investigation and have created for myself pressure to just release something, even if I'm not sure it's the truth. What I want to do is make sure we have it right and we have all those questions answered before we put a report out there.
All right, State Auditor Rob Sand, thank you so much for taking the time this week to update us.
You bet. Thanks.